The Neptune 3 drifted in a decaying orbit around an unnamed planet. Its systems flickered in red alert as the six-person crew gathered in the communications room. Captain Estella, a woman with short hair and deep-set eyes, adjusted the manual controls of the central hologram, trying to decipher the fragmented transmission that had brought them there. "Signs of subterranean life," she murmured to herself, while Engineer Ottavio, a quantum mechanics specialist, scratched his head in suspicion. It doesn't make sense. No record of this planet existing before the gravitational anomaly. Biologist Veronica, always pragmatic, prepared antiseptic syringes, as if sensing that the ship's air was no longer as sterile as it should be. Then, the first scream echoed through the corridors, a guttural human sound, but distorted, as if something was dragging the vowels into itself. Everyone exchanged glances, but no one moved. Only Navigator Torum, a man of calculated silence, slipped out of the room. His flashlight cut through the encroaching darkness in the ventilation ducts. Later, when Torum's body was found in the cargo bay, there were no external marks, only an expression of pure terror frozen on his face. His skin, however, was strangely translucent, revealing veins pulsing in non-human patterns. Estella ordered the body isolated, but it was too late. The air recycling system spread unknown particles throughout the ship. Ottavio, while trying to repair the damaged warp drive, noticed his hands trembling involuntarily, as if something was pulling his tendons from within. Veronica, analyzing a sample of Torum's blood, discovered that his cells were rearranging themselves into fractal structures, something impossible according to all known biological laws. "It's as if he were evolving into something else," she said, her voice failing. In the bridge, pilot Nika, young and previously full of acidic jokes, now stared into the void, repeating phrases in dead languages that no one there had ever studied. The ship's simulated night, with lights oscillating between blue and amber, became suffocating. In her log, Estella wrote, "Day 47, the anomaly is not a phenomenon. It is a choice." She couldn't explain where these words came from. In the infirmary, Ottavio found Veronica unconscious, her body wrapped in a gelatinous membrane that seemed to breathe in sync with her metabolism. The membrane displayed luminous symbols that burned into his peripheral vision. At the same time, Nika, in the bridge, redirected the ship for a direct collision with the planet. Her fingers moved across the controls with a precision no training could justify. When Estella tried to reverse the course, she discovered that the access codes had been altered to sequences corresponding to her own DNA coordinates. As the countdown to impact began, Torum, or what remained of him, emerged in the engine room. His form was now an organic mass in constant transformation, parts of his body dissolving into black smoke and reforming into grotesque shapes. "The prophecy is not a warning," his voice echoed through all the speakers. "It is an invitation." Ottavio, holding a screwdriver like a weapon, realized that the anomaly was not a parasite, but a kind of cosmic natural selection. Only those who merged with the darkness would survive the collapse of reality. Veronica, briefly waking, whispered something about transcendental symbiosis, before her tongue fused to her palate. Estella, alone in the bridge, saw the monitors display not a planet, but a black hole enveloped in chains of solid light, like a web waiting for prey. The ship trembled, the corridors filled with a low hum, and Nika, now unrecognizable, laughed as the darkness consumed her completely. The collision never happened. Instead, the Neptune 3 was pulled into the black hole, but there was no destruction. Estella felt her body disintegrate and reform in an instant, each atom reorganized into something new. When she opened her eyes, she was on an infinite plane, under a sky where stars were born and died in seconds. Ottavio, Veronica, and the others were there, but they were no longer human. Their forms oscillated between matter and energy, as if reality itself didn't know how to define them. Before them stood a crystalline structure. Its facets reflected scenes of all civilizations that had ever existed. "You are the first to arrive conscious," said a voice that came from nowhere. "The prophecy only begins when the journey ends." Estella tried to ask what that meant, but her mouth no longer formed words. Instead, she knew. The answer was in every cell of her transformed body. And then, as if answering an ancient call, the crystalline structure pulled them inside, and the entire universe held its breath. The crystalline structure had no doors, but swallowed them nonetheless. Estella felt her bones vibrate at impossible frequencies, as if time unfolded within her. The crystal walls showed scenes that could not exist. Civilizations raising towers to the sun, only to be consumed by intelligent lichen. Children born old, weeping memories of lives not lived. Otavio, now a trembling silhouette of light and flesh, tried to understand the patterns on the surfaces, but the numbers rearranged themselves into equations that only made sense if he accepted that death was a transition, not an end. Veronica, or what remained of her, realized that the membrane in her body was not an infection, but a language. Each cell pulsed with stories of species that surrendered to the anomaly. They weren't destroyed, she thought or heard. They spread. As they continued, the air grew heavy with the smell of ozone and something organic, like fresh blood mixed with wet earth. Nika, now an elongated figure with limbs that divided into translucent claws, went ahead, drawing the group into a chamber where the floor was made of faces frozen in silent screams. Estella recognized some, the man she abandoned years ago, the sister who died young, her own reflection in alternative versions. "You are here because you chose to see," said the voice, now coming from behind. Torum, or what remained of him, hovered above them, his mass pulsing with colors that burned in their eyes. The prophecy is not about surviving. It is about belonging. Otavio, struggling against the disintegration of his body, tore a piece of the crystal and smashed it against his arm. The pain came quickly, but clearly. Within the mineral was a code, a genetic sequence that intertwined with his own. "We are being rewritten," he said, spitting blood that vanished before it fell. Veronica, for a moment, regained her voice. "It's not rewritten. Revealed." She pointed to the walls, where new images emerged. The Neptune 3, not as it was, but as it could be, a living organism, fused with the crew in perfect union. Nika let out a sound, laughter or sob, and the chamber filled with dark water, rising quickly. Estella tried to run, but her legs were no longer solid. Her muscles turned into tentacles that pulled her to the bottom. In the dark water, visions struck her like shocks. She saw the truth of the anomaly. It was not an invader, but an immune system. The universe, tired of expanding, selected species capable of merging with the void between stars. The survivors would become antibodies against entropy. "Do you understand now?" Torum whispered, his voice bubbling in the water. "The journey doesn't end. It begins again." Estella wanted to scream, but roots sprouted in her mouth, connecting her to the walls. Above, the water froze, forming patterns with the black hole's coordinates. Something was coming. Something that was everything. And the Neptune 3, floating beyond the ice, repeated the message on loop, "Welcome to the first day." The ice cracked. Estella saw her own body disintegrate into threads of light, each piece attracting others until forming a new whole. Neither human nor machine, but something that breathed in the crevices between dimensions. Otavio, now a network of glowing veins connected to a pulsating core, discovered that the code in the crystal was a key to opening layers of reality that humanity hadn't even imagined. Veronica, mixed with a column of silvery liquid, understood that the membrane in her body was not a prison, but a passage. Through it, she accessed memories of billions of years, from the first microscopic beings to civilizations that dissolved into nebulae. Nika, for a moment, returned to traces of her former form, only to smile with teeth that multiplied into endless spirals. "You are the first," Torum's voice, emerging from a vortex that sucked pieces of the room, said. "And the last." The dark water dried, revealing an abyss where stars were born from seeds of darkness. The crystal structure began to crumble, its pieces flying to a single point, a rotating black hole, but not empty. Inside, something observed, learned, chose. Estella, or what remained of her mind, felt a connection to everything. She saw alternative versions of herself, a mother on a rural planet, a soldier in an atomic war, an energy entity in a distant galaxy. All repeated the same truth: the journey doesn't end. Otavio tried to resist, holding onto a piece of his humanity, a childhood memory, the smell of grease, a scribbled account in a notebook. But the force pulling him was too ancient, too great for any fear. Veronica, in her last moments of defined form, understood that the prophecy was not a test to destroy, but to unite. Only those who abandoned their bodies, becoming something beyond, could be antibodies of the universe, maintaining the balance between creation and chaos. When the last piece of the crystal vanished, the Neptune 3 reappeared intact, orbiting the unnamed planet. Inside, the crew's bodies were there, breathing, but different. Translucent skins showed organs that glowed in geometric patterns, eyes that reflected unknown stars. In the command cabin, the screens repeated the same message that had brought them there, now on loop: "Welcome to the first day." Out there, in the void, something murmured. Not in words, not in sounds, but in a certainty that entered the transformed minds. "You will be the next to send the signal."